from what I understood and my family's understanding, it was the place to be for basketball in the state of North Carolina. And if you wanted to learn basketball and be around the greatest in the sport, you came to Campbell.
I see people all the time when I tell them I'm from Buies Creek and Campbell University. They're like, oh, I went to camp there. I went to basketball camp there as a kid.
I cannot walk through the airport right now without someone coming up to me and said, my son went to basketball camp, or my grandson went to basketball camp, or my granddaughter went to basketball camp. But all roads lead back to Buies Creek on this thing.
Everybody in the country knew about it. I could go out. I remember once I was out in California for a convention, stepped off an elevator, was going out for a run that morning, had on a basketball shirt from Campbell, and immediately somebody stopped me getting off the elevator out in California and started talking to me about the basketball school. That's the way it was everywhere you went.
Our daddy, Fred McCall, was an idea man, and he had the idea that he had an empty college campus, and he had a love of basketball, and he thought he'd put those two together. And so he called Bones McKinney and said, I've got an idea, why don't you and I start a basketball camp at Campbell? So they did.
He was a great fundamental coach, and he just wanted to teach, and I think he and Bones had talked about it. I don't think he thought he could do it without Bones, his reputation at Wake Forest.
He founded it, co-founded with Coach Bones McKinney of Wake Forest in 1956, really as a way to further the development of basketball skills in young people at that time, and also to bring people to Buies Creek during summer school days to help drive the commerce, so to speak, of the school. It was a junior college at that time.
So you have Dolph Shays, Press Maravich, Teapot Fry, Danny Roberts, Hoggy Davis, okay, my dad, Coach Wooden. He just kind of blends in. So I think Coach Wooden had already won 2 national championships. And out of the blue, my daddy called him in California and said, would you like to come? And he said, why not? Did not know him. He did not know him. He called him out of the blue, and he came.
Coach Wooden and Coach McCall were great friends. He would come, he would spend the week in Buies Creek, spend a lot of time with Coach McCall and his family, and just to be exposed to and firsthand just, hear and talk to those people.
Well, I think Fred McCall could talk anybody into doing anything, and they became friends. And when they came over here, they just loved it because it was such a relaxed atmosphere. He was the greatest guy. They loved it because it was such related, and his wife came, and it's like a vacation for him. They come for 2 weeks and stay.
He loved the serious instruction of the basketball. He was in charge. I think he was usually at Carter Gym, and I think he taught defense. And the first thing he did with every session was he taught the kids how to take off their shoes and socks and how to put on their socks correctly. That was his very first basketball lesson.
John Wooden was a big believer in man-to-man defense. He thought quickness was more important than size. And then you mix that with Press Maravich. Press Maravich was one of the most brilliant basketball minds there has ever been.
They used to put Coach Wooden and Press Maravich in the same room during camp. And it got to be funny because Coach Wooden was very, very laid back, very religious, and Press was just the opposite. He talked like a sailor, and he said, why do y'all always put me? And Coach Roberts and Coach McCall said, we're trying to help you be better. But they would put those two in the room together. They were just polar opposites.
The college coaches they came in here and they just loved it. Because at that time, we were really the only camping anywhere within 500 miles. We did a lot of different things, played cards, just get in a room and talk and joke. And then a couple of nights a week, we'd all get together over in the science building and talk basketball, draw X and O's, different things that different people were doing. And when you got the people that we had here, you could
really absorbed a lot.
I was a child of grew up in the 70s and 80s, and almost anyone that you would have thought of came through this camp. Dean Smith, legendary head coach. Dave Odom at Wake Forest. Les Robinson when he was at NC State.
Norm Sloan from North Carolina State. Terry Holland from Virginia. Jerry Steele that was at High Point. Sam Moore, who came from Catawba College.
Sylvia Hatchell was very loyal and faithful to the basketball school.
I had Kay Yao down here, Pat Summers from Tennessee. So I had some really good girls coaches too.
Lefty Driesell. Bobby Crimmins came from Georgia Tech. Carl Tacey was at Wake Forest. If you were an ACC coach at any time during the 70s and 80s, you probably came through Bowie's Creek if it worked into your schedule.
What was fun is that I know that Daddy would have these coaches come and they work and live together for 2 weeks and do a lot of laughing, a lot of eating, and a lot of basketball together. And then the next winter, they sit on opposite sides of the court trying to beat each other in a ball game. So it was kind of neat that they really were friends. I can say for my generation of people who grew up in Bowie's Creek, the basketball school was 2 weeks of just pure fun.
Telling on my age here, but when I was 8 years old in 1975, I actually came to basketball camp.
I came 7 straight years.
I was a sophomore in high school, came to basketball camp at Campbell. And I came back my next year, and I came back my senior year. And it's the only college campus I've ever been on in my life.
I came to camp in 1965 for the first time, and my first counselor here was Johnny Marshbanks.
I think in the heyday it was more about the pure love of the sport, and our basketball school was really a hub of that in the 60s and 70s especially. And in this small town where there aren't the distractions, moms and dads aren't worried about sending their boy or girl to Bowie's Creek, so to speak, and they stayed in the dorms and got a little taste of what life was like on a college campus for those 4 or 5 nights that they would spend in the dorms and then be on campus.
Camp was an unbelievable operation. The masterminds behind setting up the basketball school at Campbell were, it's incredible when you think about it, how smoothly a process would run when you were dealing with the number of campers that Campbell was bringing in and out of the institution each year for camp.
No computers, no spreadsheets, about a dozen gyms and 800 little boys of all sizes, and dozens of coaches and counselors. And I can remember our father being in our home with his yellow pad and a pad for each day, for each gym, for each session, and dozens of yellow sheets on the floor in front of him. And I can remember going like, "Oh my gosh, Daddy, what are you doing?" He says, "I'm trying to figure out who goes to what gym, what session, on what day, with which counselor." And so it was all handwritten and just very laborious, but it all worked.
We had 1,000 kids per week, and we had them from all over the country. We had them from different walks of life. We had to pick them up at the airport. We had to get them at the bus stations. They were coming from everywhere.
But you had people from New York, you had people from Maryland, all over the place who came here because the camp was so good.
It was a fundamental camp. When we first started, we'd go for 3 hours in the morning, all fundamentals, 2.5 hours in the afternoon, all fundamentals, and then we'd let the kids play at night.
The program is regimented. I'm not sure the kids of today would have the physical stamina and the concentration to take on what we took on, because there were 2.5 to 3 hour segments where you may pretty much be in your defensive stance for about 2.5 to 3 hours. Or you might be working on rebounding, and you'd be working on that drill work for about 3 hours. And
it was a massive undertaking, tremendous organization to getting the kids in here on Sunday afternoon, get them registered, get them into a room, and get them fed and come back and have an assembly.
We'd come in on Sunday, there'd be a worship service and a program, and everybody from the camp would be introduced.
You would go to breakfast at 7:30 in the morning at Marshbanks, and the line would go all the way from the serving line back out the front door, down the sidewalk, and down the sidewalk that goes all the way to the science building. The breakfast line would be all the way back to the middle of the science building. That's how many people were here.
But we had all the buses set up, had the name of the gym that it was going to on the bus or in the window. And the kids would get with their group leader. Their group leader would meet them. They had a certain place to be, and then they would get on that bus, or if they were going into Carter, they met outside Carter. It depended on what gym they were going to.
And bam, they're gone for the next 3 hours. And they're learning defense at this station, offense at this station, shooting at this station.
When we got there, there'd be a head coach in that gym that was a college coach that was so serious about all of us learning the right way to play the games.
Well, they taught you everything. They taught you from the bottom to the top. They started with ball handling. They did form shooting, making sure your elbow was under you. They covered the whole basis on fundamentals of the game. And the best part about it was you were getting instructed by people that really knew what they were talking about. The quality of the coaches and the counselors at the camp was, now that I look back on it, was incredible.
I think one smart thing Daddy did was, of all these almost a dozen gyms he used, he also employed those high school coaches in the camps. And that's a real human touch, because these coaches work with these type of players all day, every day. They don't work with superstars. So you had a really mix, and Coach Wooden is quoted as saying that not every coach here was famous, but every coach here was good. They were all good coaches.
This was the beginning of college basketball camps, because at that time the NCAA didn't allow you to have a camp for your own kids and work your own people. So we had players from Carolina and State and Duke and all over everywhere come in and work for us. All Americans come in and work camp for us.
After lunch, you go back to your drill sessions, and but before you did that, there was always an assembly in the gym, and that's when guys like Pistol Pete or John Wood, these guys would put on incredible clinics.
You know, I mean, it was hard not to go around and punch somebody and say, look, there goes Michael Jordan, or, you know, there goes Lefty Driesell, or let's go hear what he's going to talk about at the Chalk Talk today at lunch. And I remember the summer before I was coming to school at Campbell as a student athlete, getting a phone call from my basketball coach asking me what I was doing at the time. And she said, you need to get over to campus as quickly as possible. Pistol Pete Maravich is going to be performing in Carter Gym. And so I got in my car and got to Buies Creek as quickly as possible, got into Carter Gym. It was packed, and what a sight to see it was.
Watching the things that Pete did on this floor when he did his showtime routine, his showing his skills, it was he's done things on that I've never seen anybody do since then or before then.
And then the afternoon session, we all taught the same thing, no matter what gym we were at. They'd come back, they'd have dinner, same thing, a little bit of break, let the food settle, they'd go back.
And then the night session, it was always 5-on-5 in games. Like they would have contests, knockout games, hot shot, three-point contests, and then you play your 5-on-5 games with your team for that week.
And then at nighttime, when you finish the last session of the day, you come in at nighttime, all the college players were out there in the gym would play games.
So you would have really the UNC stars playing the Elon stars and the Campbell stars, so you would have a mix of abilities.
I mean, you could have won the NCAA championship with the players we had playing at night. There's no doubt about that. I would take all the counselors and I would put them in teams. Big man here, you know, guard here, or what that. Then we'd post it. I'd get referees, and they'd play to 10 points, 10 baskets. The winners stay up.
And so it was so intense because if you lost, you knew you had to sit out the next game. The winning team always stayed up. And so, when it got down to that last point, you're talking about real defense against real offense of great players. It was just so exciting. And then to have that little gym full of people from all over the community, all the kids that were in camp, would all, jockey for a seat to get as close as they could to the action. But it was such an electric atmosphere, night in and night out, from the very first night, which is Sunday night when we all checked in, until Thursday night was the last night because we all went home on Friday. But every night, everybody looked forward to those pickup games.
At 9 o'clock, the community packed into Carter Gym as well. And there are people of a certain age that remember going over there and seeing the stars of the day playing in these games before agents and big money contracts and worried about getting injured.
At the end of the day, after you going through 3 sessions, you wanted to sit back and just kind of, watch them, competing and looking at all the fundamental skills that we've been working on and thinking, okay, this is how it's supposed to look. I guess it kind of pieced everything together for the campers.
As I got older and I was in college myself and I was in high school, I was able to play in those counselors games. And I can tell you, I learned a lot playing in those games because I was playing with older, stronger guys.
When you had someone like Pistol Pete in the games and she had pro players that was there, and he was in college at the time, it was, as great as Pete was at the time, and he was great, those pros didn't want to be overshadowed by what he did. And you had some great players come through there.
It was about time recruiting for the pros was going on too. And you'd hear somebody got an offer from a certain place, and of course everybody congratulated him. And it was all basketball. It was all about what basketball was doing from the top to the bottom. You had little kids like this running around, thought they could play basketball. You had kids 7 foot tall running around, thought they could play basketball.
And it was so organized that they got all the basketball that they could possibly get in that 4 or 5 days that they were here. Plus, they were able to have free time to have fun. I think that it was an opportunity for them to not only gain a lot of knowledge, but they were able to make lifelong friends and make lots of wonderful memories, as did we as counselors and coaches.
But what it turned into was a major corporation. It was a major corporation because you had to have food service, transportation, you've got to have medical help, and all of these are separate little entities within the camp itself. So it really was an amazing tool for the university.
I think Daddy has been quoted saying, another good thing about the basketball school is that local teachers don't work in the summertime, and it gave everybody 2 weeks of work, and more once they had a girls' school too.
And they added a girls' camp in the 70s to respond to the growth and interest of women's sports. So you could have anywhere 2,500 kids to close to 3,000 kids on campus over a 3-week span in the high times.
I started the girls' camp. I saw what was happening with girls, how it was becoming very popular. Now, it grew to 400, and that's all I wanted. I couldn't look after more than 400 girls.
Once Coach Watkins became the director of the girls' basketball school, Tanya Crevier, the world's best female ball handler, she was one of the first people that she reached out to. And this is a lady that travels all over the world, entertaining and spreading, the gospel. Also, they would bring in, male athletes. You had male and female working as counselors.
I remember when Sylvia Crawley came in, and before she gave her little talk at lunch that day, she went out onto the court and dunked the basketball, and just, everybody just going crazy, because it was pretty uncommon then to see a female dunk the basketball. I always spent a lot of time with our staff talking about the fact that, you're being a role model for these young women. A lot of you are a role model in sport that they've never had. So we need to really be conscientious of that. We need to be aware of that. And we need to use that in a way to help implement and develop our sport and give these little girls the role models that they've long desired. Give them opportunities to sit down and visit with you, share with them, show them attention, learn them by name, call them by name, help them with drills, answer their questions, and give back to the sport that's been good to you so that it'll be good to them as well.
You were like a superstar. Campers every time you turn around, they were wanting your autograph, as opposed to, you usually think of NBA players or players coming in from the ACC schools or whatever, but as their role models, we need to make sure that we were teaching them things that were going to help them grow, not only in the sport of basketball, but in life.
This was the breeding ground for the camp process in the whole United States when you get right down to it. People came here, they worked here, and they saw this, and then after a while, Carolina had the big camp, and Duke had their big camp, and I think this was the breeding ground for all the big things that took place as far as basketball camp.
People would come here to work the basketball school and then get an idea of how they would go back and start their own basketball school.
So they changed the rules, and then the camps popped up on every corner. Every school has a camp, and it made our camp smaller, but it didn't make it any less. I mean, it's still the best camp. You want to learn how to play fundamental basketball, this is still the best camp in the world to come to.
We still have a traditional overnight sleepover camp. They love the experience. I mean, I know that everybody that I talk to currently is like super excited about our camp. My sons included. Can't wait for the week when they get to come here and eat in a dining hall and sleep in the dorms and play games for 12 hours a day.
For a lot of the kids that come, especially the younger kids, it's their first experience away from home. When you put kids in an environment where they have to be together and they have to learn from each other and learn that it's not their universe and they have to get along, that's what we really stress with our kids. We're going to get along this week. And you have kids from totally different backgrounds that sometimes they're around people that they haven't been around. And so I think it's a great opportunity when they're younger to learn to get along with others and just enjoy getting to know different people.
About 4 years ago, my wife and I started a scholarship program for the camp because when I came to camp, I didn't pay for it. I don't know if my mom and dad did, my grandparents paid for it, my aunt, somebody paid for it. We worked it out, and I said, if there's people that want to come, kids that want to come to the camp and they can't pay, Coach McGee will do a financial thing. Fine, if they really can't pay and they want to come, me and my wife will pay for them to come. And it started with the basketball camp, but without this place, I wouldn't have had a life.
What I've tried to take from Campbell and my learning experiences at the basketball school was just how impactful that basketball school was on my life and having me dream big dreams. That helped me start my basketball school to try and touch underserved young people that may not be able to afford to go to a basketball school like I was, or like my parents sent me to, allow them to have that same type experience and use the relationships that I built over the years and have those friends come in and support me in touching other kids' lives and being able to change their lives or help them change their lives.
Campbell was my start. I learned the game, the fundamentals of the game at Campbell. I went from a 6-point average my sophomore year in high school to a 21-point average the following year, and I attribute it to Campbell. What I learned at Campbell, basic fundamentals of the game. When I went off to play professional basketball, I was asked to come back as a guest speaker, and I did that when I was with the Detroit Pistons. And it was great. It was almost like coming home in that regard.
I think it really helped put Campbell in the forefront of colleges, and the camp, I think, certainly helped that thing.
Probably the biggest thing that kept me coming back had to be the people, the coaches that were brought in to work with the students, the campers. They were just awesome.
What makes places really special are the people. And people will tell you that anywhere you go, there are good people. But they're not good people like the good people in Buies Creek.
Coach Bob Etheridge played for Daddy in the 60s, and I think he just showed up with a duffel bag and said, I want to play for you, and my dad said, come on. So let's go. And he turned out to be a rock star. So he was great, but he was in our House of Representatives in Washington, D.C. It says, Mr. Speaker, Coach McCall not only taught others and me about basketball, he taught us about life. Coach McCall not only helped me be a better player, he helped me be a better human being. The life lessons taught to me and countless others by Coach McCall's special brand of coaching are lessons we live by to this day. Coach McCall helped strengthen Campbell University, his community, and his country. On behalf of the people of North Carolina, I rise today to offer our eternal gratitude.